So I held a poll on the YouTube channel the other day and I asked you guys, who did you want to see for the next striker breakdown? And surprisingly, even with his loss to Calvin Kattar over the weekend, you guys chose Giga. So I went about my normal business of doing my research, which for any of you wondering means I basically sit down and watch all of his fights and I start making notes. I start looking for patterns, I start looking for repeated behaviors, and I build a catalog of a certain number of categories and we cover them within the striker breakdown. Things like stance, guard, punching techniques, kicking techniques. And I got to the kicking techniques section and I'm watching the fights and I'm just so impressed by the world famous, the named Giga kick. So I thought, well, a striker breakdown would be great, and he does other interesting things, but what I just kept going back to was how interesting it was, both the way he threw this kick and the setups he used to do it. So I thought, why not do a video just specifically on that? So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to specifically take a look at the Giga kick, what makes it work, why it's so effective, and a 3-point plan on how you guys could start implementing it into your striking game if you wanted to. Alright, point number 1 is the open stance situation. For those who don't know, the Giga kick is effectively a rear leg roundhouse kick that's thrown from a southpaw stance onto an orthodox opponent. Now, why is all of that important? Well, it's a couple of things. Firstly, in order to throw this kick, the open stance is preferable. The reason is when you fight someone open stance, it exposes that midsection a lot more. That side is a lot more vulnerable to kicks because just so much more of the target is available. Whereas on the other side, where they're effectively got their back to you, even if they're in a pretty square position, it's far easier for them to turn their back away to you and therefore kind of nullifies that technique on that side. So that's the first thing. The second thing is just the anatomy of the body in the terms of the location of the liver. The liver is located slightly to the right side of the abdomen. So again, if you fight as orthodox, that right rear side is what's vulnerable to getting the Giga kick. And the reason that the Giga kick is so effective, rather than just the fact that it's powerful, is that it can hit the liver. And for any of you that have never experienced the liver shot, it's kind of like getting kicked in the nuts. I mean, it's very similar in the sense that you're getting kicked directly in an organ, and the body has got a very dramatic response to that. It really gets very affected by it. So it drops you, and it's not something that you can kind of power your way through. It's not like muscle pain or joint pain where if you really wanted it, you could tough your way through it. Your body shuts down, man. You drop, you curl up into a ball, and you've seen this with a lot of Giga's opponents. There's just no recovering from it. And of course, your opponent is going to capitalize on it. So not only do you have the pain of that kick, you've then probably got someone standing on top of you, punching you in the head. Now, the reason I bring this point up in the first place is if you actually watch Giga, and in particular go watch a lot of his kickboxing bouts in Glory, he fights a lot of the time out of an orthodox stance. His boxing combinations and a lot of the setups for his other kicks, like his lead leg question mark kick, they come out of an orthodox stance. So he has intentionally worked on this ability to switch to the southpaw stance, in particular to create this opening on orthodox opponents. And that's quite a specific thing to do. Most people, if they're an orthodox fighter, they'll work out of orthodox and they'll figure out what weapons they can use from that position. Whereas if they're a southpaw fighter, they work out what weapons they can use from that position. Whereas when you start trying to approach your fights from a switch position, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're trying to create an opportunity where you can throw all techniques off of both sides. That's obviously like an idealistic and dream scenario, isn't it? If you could fight left or right and you could throw whatever technique from either side, depending on what would suit for that contest against that opponent. But in reality, with just the amount of time you have to train and kind of the anatomy of your body, it realistically what you are going to do is you're going to find specific tools that you can use from one stance and other tools that you can use from the other. So Giga's made a real career out of this ability to switch to that southpaw stance in order to throw this specific technique. Point number 2 is the lack of hip rotation. Typically, when you learn how to throw a rear leg roundhouse kick, the big thing that you work on is that ability to rotate and pivot your hip round. I've done a very popular video on 3 tips for turning your hip for the roundhouse kick, and it talks all about this concept of turning your hip over to basically help put your body weight behind the technique, generate more force and land an awesome shot. Great. Giga actually goes against the grain with this one and opts to minimize the amount that he rotates his hip. The big reason for this is what he's doing is he's effectively stripping down the mechanics of the kick. And what that means is there's less steps in order to throw it, and what that means is he can throw it faster. The beauty of attacking such a vulnerable part of the body, such as the liver, is it doesn't require the same amount of force in order to do great amounts of damage. We've seen it so many times where people get hit just right on just the right point of the chin, and it's not a particularly massive shot, but you just hit that button and that puts someone out. And the Giga kick is very similar to this in the sense that if he hits that spot on the liver, it doesn't necessarily matter that he hasn't pivoted and rotated his hip round to generate maximum force, because he's going to hit that sweet spot and that's going to do all the work for him. So by minimizing this hip rotation, what he's able to do is get his kick from point A, the floor, to point B, the liver, a lot faster. And what it also does is help with point 3, which is effectively disguising the height that the kick is going to attack. Point number 3, disguising the intention. What I'm talking about here is one of the most typical setups you'll see him use with this kick is he'll blast his opponent with a couple of head kicks. So with that rear leg, from that southpaw stance, everything as is, but instead of going for that body, he will just blast his leg at their head. Now, 9 times out of 10, they block that kick. They get their guard up there. But again, and this is for any of you that have never experienced this before, block a full pelt head kick with your arm. You won't get knocked out if you're really lucky. You won't get knocked out, but you're not going to want to feel that kick. It's a warning sign for you. You're like, wow, right, I'm glad I blocked that, because if that hit me, I was going to sleep. Now, what that does in your mind, of course, is it starts really setting you up and making you very triggered and reactory to when you see that kick coming. What does that mean? It means you're going to lift that guard. What does that mean? If he then switches up the height and goes down to the body, he's probably going to get underneath that guard and hit you with the body shot. And the beauty of this for Giga's point of view is this is reversible. I've seen him do it on a couple of occasions where he does the exact opposite. He'll blast you in the body. You'll get your arm down because you're well aware of the Giga kick and you don't want to be another one on the highlight reel, and you start reacting to that. Now you're dropping that arm, and again, now you're exposing yourself to a rear leg head kick. Just as bad, sometimes even worse. And like we said, by minimizing that hip rotation, what he's doing is he's taking away some of the information that a fighter might use to read the direction of that kick, to know whether or not it's going up high or going down low. If you don't see as much information, you've got less things to process, it means there's more chance that you're going to rely on just instinct and basically luck to know whether or not you're going to block up high or you're going to block down low. And then it can also be a game of like 50-50 poker. You block up high, you might have just exposed yourself to the Giga kick. You block down low, you might have just exposed yourself to a head kick. Right, so there it is, guys. There's the 3 main points that I kind of get away when I look at Giga and watch him throw that technique. I thought Calvin Kattar did an amazing job this weekend. That forward pressure and the ability to get a kicker on his back foot was just simply fantastic. But you guys are true martial art connoisseurs, so I'm sure that you haven't written Giga off and just assumed that he's rubbish now. You guys aren't filthy casuals. I'm sure that Giga will make a return, make some necessary adjustments, as we've seen him done. He has lost fights before and he's made great adjustments to his takedown defense and his ability to get back up off the bottom, and I think now he'll make the necessary adjustments for these forward pressure fighters to help create space and maybe round out his game so that he's not just reliant on his amazing kicks. Guys, if you've enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button for me. Hit subscribe, we've got new videos coming every week, and I will see you on the next one.